O vast pain exceeding words!
Thou shalt find no escape. Do not make me destroy thee. Great importance shalt thou have within the Empire's power, and thine own shall only grow with time. I prithee, join with me, and I your training shall complete. When our strength is combined, we shall conclude this bitter conflict, and bring order to the galaxy entire.
I never shall join thee! I'd rather be destroyed!
If thou but knewest all the power of the dark side, Obi-Wan hath never told thee of what happened to thy father, Luke.
Oh, he hath told me much. He has spoken of the truth that thou didst slay him. Aye, without cause or mercy, murderer most vile and wretched.
No, I am thy father.
No!
Indeed, I'm actually your host. Everybody, and welcome to Lit and Lang, where we examine literature new and old as readers and writers, and have a lot of fun doing it. I'm Hollis. Now, before we dive into William Shakespeare's Star Wars trilogy, we have to get some things straight, for those of you in both fandoms, Star Wars and Shakespeare. And don't you tell me!
Oh, but Hollis, Shakespeare's not a fandom. I'm just more sophisticated than the average Joe and really enjoy great literature and drama, rather than pop culture.
Well, guess what? Shakespeare was pop culture! Theatergoers really liked him, and you were cool if you quoted him.
To be or not to be.
Thou fancy Shakespeare? My heart doth adore those plays.
Kinda like...
May the force be with you.
You watch Star Wars? Oh my gosh, I love those movies!
The Elizabethan cultural elites looked down on theater and judged all the people who went to it. Kinda like modern cultural elites judge film and don't like people who go to movies.
Thou goest to one of those plays of William Shakespeare? I would not venture forth thus on threat of my life. Go and enjoy such empty rubbish. If thou dost not appreciate true and authentic art, I will be at my hearth reading Chaucer.
'Tis queer that thou speakest of Chaucer. The play I am bound for, The Two Noble Kinsmen, borrows its plot from the Knight's Tale.
What?
Verily, thou couldst even call it William Shakespeare's Canterbury Tale.
Blasphemy!
The plays are brilliant, and academia eventually recognized that, but their popularity came from the ground up, just like Star Wars. Plus, there's Shakespeare fanfiction on fanfiction.net. And the American Shakespeare Center sells stuff like this, which is fan swag, if I've ever seen it. Fan swag which I might have bought. So you are a fandom, just like everybody else. Anyway, back on track. These are adaptations, not parodies. They have funny moments, but that's because Star Wars and Shakespeare both use humor. The scripts also contain moments that have significant dramatic and emotional power, just like the originals. Some of Vader's monologues and the last scene between him and Luke are some of my personal favorites. They're enough to bring some tears to the eyes. So, no one has ever produced these scripts as big theatrical productions, though Random House Audio did do a great audio drama version. Author Ian Doescher did write the scripts with Shakespeare's theater conventions in mind, though. This has a few consequences. First of all, we are dealing with an apron thrust stage, which basically just means the stage pushes or thrusts into audience space, with seating on three sides. In keeping with Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, we also have a balcony, which is mostly used in The Jedi Death Returns at the climax when we're switching between scenes rapidly. Though the descriptions of the ship battles are scant, those that Doescher does provide, and the illustrations of the book, indicate that they would be puppets, with the puppeteers possibly also playing the pilots. Thus, Doescher effectively shapes a special effects-driven film into something that Shakespeare could have realistically produced on stage. A very impressive feat. Some questions still remain about how exactly a theater would produce these scripts, however. For instance, at the end of Verily A New Hope, characters from the Death Star and the Rebel base appear on stage during the fighter battle. Doescher did this to represent the film's quick cutting between locations. This presents a challenge for producers. Modern theater conventions would lead one to use a spotlight on the Death Star characters, but the Elizabethan stage would not have had lighting effects of any kind. They would perform all plays in the same light, which the ASC has popularized in their phrase,
We do it with the lights on.
So what should a producer do? Stay true to Shakespeare's stage conventions, or make allowances for modern technology? Unfortunately, we won't know the answer anytime soon because in a recent interview, Doescher stated that Lucasfilm is not allowing anyone, not even colleges and high schools, to produce these plays, which is a real shame. We will never know the answers to these types of questions until someone actually tries to stage them. So Lucasfilm, if you are watching this, let me say that I love you guys. I have defended many of the decisions you've made since the Disney buyout to my peers and colleagues, and I love what you're doing with the sequel trilogy. But I have to say, the ban on productions of William Shakespeare's Star Wars is, in my opinion, not very well thought out. You can make a lot more money off of renting the play out to the many theaters who are biting at the bit to produce it than you can on audio dramas, be them ever so awesome. And the American Shakespeare Center has recently started an initiative to produce new plays using Elizabethan staging conditions. I'm pretty sure they'd be more than willing to help you bring these to the stage. Right now, with this ban, you are not only missing out on revenue, I mean just think about all the merchandise sales you could make off these productions, but you are also depriving us scholars and dramatists from finding answers to these fascinating questions about staging. Doescher is not the first person to rewrite Shakespeare. It all started with Sir William Davenant, who restaged Shakespeare's productions in the late 1600s using scenic backgrounds and a huge dose of spectacle. He also rewrote the scripts to fit the sensibilities of his time. After a long history of reworking, theaters eventually returned to Shakespeare's original texts, but complicated and spectacle-driven productions still dominate, though some versions, like Peter Brook's version of A Midsummer Night's Dream, are still popular. Film versions, in particular, revel in excessive scenery that Shakespeare could never have captured on stage. Film has also given rise to more transformative adaptations, such as Scotland, Pennsylvania, which sets the Scottish play in an American fast food restaurant with music from Bad Company. Musical theater has also drawn tons of inspiration from the Bard, including such pieces as The Boys from Syracuse, Swing in the Dream, Kiss Me Kate, West Side Story, The Lion King, Rockabye Hamlet, and, lest we forget Miranda, In the Heights. Overall, Charles H. Shattuck summarized the situation well. Quote, "The further we move from the Globe Playhouse, the more noisily we congratulate ourselves and invoke Shakespeare's approval." One could even argue that Star Wars takes some of its inspiration from Shakespeare, as the films play with archetypes and tropes familiar from the canon, such as separated twins, the comedy of errors, the Twelfth Night, bickering lovers, Much Ado About Nothing, ghosts, Hamlet, and evil emperors, Julius Caesar. Let's unpack some of these types in Doescher's scripts a little bit more. Since this is lit and lang, let's start by talking about the language of the adaptation. Following Shakespeare's use of a chorus in Henry V, Doescher uses a chorus to replace the opening crawls and to narrate actions like the first Death Star battle, which would have been impossible to stage in the Elizabethan theater. Doescher's chorus, however, is far more ambitious in versification than Shakespeare's. This chorus speaks in quatrains throughout the plays, and the episode prologues and epilogues are sonnets. Doescher also includes numerous references to famous Shakespeare lines, all of which he explains in his really helpful educational guides, which you can find right here. In some cases, the scripts even give us more characterization than the movies, through the use of asides and soliloquies in which the characters express their inner thoughts and emotions. Doescher uses this most extensively for R2-D2, who still speaks and beeps to the other characters, but has asides and soliloquies in English. This gives us a much different understanding of the character, now that we do not have to infer his thoughts from shots of an expressionless dome. A few characters speak in prose, following Shakespeare's occasional use of prose to distinguish characters of lower class. Shakespeare is not constant with this practice from play to play, but he does keep each play that uses it fairly consistent. Doescher uses this convention and has Boba Fett speak in prose, as one would expect of a bounty hunter. But Jabba the Hutt, Lucas's personification of greed and lust, speaks in verse, as do the lowly stormtroopers. This does not match up with the galactic class system. Especially with Doescher establishing more formal rules than Shakespeare, it would have been better if he applied these rules more consistently. Now, I know what you're gonna say.
But Hollis, Shakespeare had monstrous characters like Caliban in The Tempest, speaking in verse, so it's, okay for Jabba too.
But Caliban has secret characteristics that set him off from other monsters. He refuses to mindlessly follow his master and expresses complex emotions and thoughts on the nature of slavery, freedom, and the meaning of life. Caliban's verse reflects his surprising character. Jabba, on the other hand, is exactly what he appears to be, a disgusting, slimy wad of corruption. If you'd like a more in-depth analysis of Doescher's verse, and the ways in which he does or does not follow Shakespeare's style for intentional dramatic effect, Browns Held High did a great video about it. You can watch it here, but don't watch it right now. We're not done hanging out. Now, let's take a look at some overarching character stuff going on in the entire trilogy. In the education guides, Doescher states that the structure of the Star Wars trilogy is closer to Henry V than any of Shakespeare's other scripts. The stories are still vastly different, however. Star Wars is a coming-of-age story where an orphan boy from the lowly moisture farms gets swept up into the galactic civil war, learns magic from several different mentors, and faces his father in the form of his arch-enemy. The climax involves Luke redeeming his father, who then dies destroying the evil establishment. The film ends with a funeral and a victory celebration. Henry V, on the other hand, follows a young, recently reformed, and untested king who rules over the establishment and wars against a rival nation over land claims and an insult involving tennis balls. Though Henry is outnumbered and outgunned, he proves himself in battle and, with God's help, defeats the French. The play ends with a marriage and the chorus explaining that the king will soon die. Obviously, these are two very different stories, though they both feature young heroes who rise to greatness through war. And war, of course, means death. Ghosts have very important roles, both in the Star Wars trilogy and in Julius Caesar, Macbeth, and, of course, Hamlet. But there are some key differences in their purposes and effects they have on other characters. In her essay on this subject, Catherine Belsley points out that all of Shakespeare's ghosts always invoke the same kind of reaction from the human characters. Quote, "Fear is brought into being by the unknown. Is this figure real or illusion, divine or demonic? What is it?" In the Star Wars films, Obi-Wan's ghost invokes no such reaction from Luke. He continues his living occupation of mentor and assists Luke on his path. Luke also immediately recognizes the ghost as Ben and never has the same degree of startling uncertainty about him. Doescher follows the film's treatment of ghosts and does not incorporate any of this Shakespearean uncertainty, which is a real shame, as it is an essential part of Shakespeare's treatment of ghosts. Also, in Julius Caesar and Macbeth, the ghosts appear to their murderers and act as prophets of doom, a role that Obi-Wan never plays. We never get a scene of Obi-Wan haunting Vader after their last battle. The ghost in Hamlet does function differently, however. Here, the ghost of our hero's father explains the truth of his death and sends his son to avenge his murderer, a task Hamlet is reluctant to undertake. This is similar to Obi-Wan's role in Return of the Jedi, where he finally tells Luke the truth about Anakin Skywalker and tries to convince the hero that killing his father is the only way to defeat the Empire. Luke and Hamlet are both caught between two father figures, one living and the other dead. Unlike Hamlet, who eventually brings justice down on his uncle, Luke ultimately rejects his ghost's mission and holds on to his faith that his father can return to the light. Doescher ties Obi-Wan and Hamlet's father together by having Obi-Wan speak the famous "Remember me" line at the end of Verily A New Hope. Speaking of Darth Vader, our favorite Sith's motivations and loyalties mark the play's most prominent divergence from the films. While the end of The Empire Strikes Back clearly shows that Vader plans, or at least desires, to overthrow the Emperor, and the extended universe media flesh out his ongoing plans to do so, these scripts portray Vader as being completely dedicated to Palpatine. In Vader's soliloquies, he says things like,
Now shall I speak with my dread Emperor, the man who gave me life when all was lost, the man to whom I owe all that I am and e'er will be, the man indeed who like a father is to me. His plans for power and schemes most excellent I do obey and carry out with pride. Though people fear my aspect bleak and dark, they should more surely fear what I will do when answering his perfect, flawless will. For sooner would I sacrifice my life than disobey the word of this great man.
Though Vader does still mention destroying Palpatine at the end of The Empire Striketh Back, that is the only hint we ever get that he's not completely loyal to Palpatine. And the Jedi Death Return, he just gives us more "I love Palpy" speeches. This subtracts from his independent agency a lot. Though, I guess it does make him more tragic, as the once willful Anakin Skywalker is now nothing more than Palpatine's lapdog. But that still isn't as interesting as the strong, menacing villain we came to know and love in the movies.
Man, Hollis, you hate these books. All you ever do is talk about how much you hate them. Can't you just relax on the analysis and enjoy it?
First, analysis is fun. Second, it is the responsibility of readers and writers to think through everything we like. We pull from text things that we enjoy and things that we can learn, both things that are awesome and things that don't quite work so well. In Doscher's original scripts, for instance, we can learn how not to take away from a great mythical character when we're adapting him. On the other hand, we can also learn how to take space opera and put it into a different context and make it really work. This is something Doescher is great at. For the rest of the video, we'll be talking about each script individually and talking about some things that are really awesome in each one of them. Interestingly, Doescher is a much more strict formalist than Shakespeare actually was. In his educational guides, Doescher explains that he didn't want people to think he was being lazy, so he was much stricter on the iambic pentameter than the bard actually was. And he has a few songs in there, like some of Shakespeare's plays.
It's a musical! A musical! What could be more amazing than a musical?
Not quite. But Leia does have a song.
My planet had the bluish shore, then sang we songs of Nani. That noble land is now no more. Sing hey and lack a day.
Though perhaps off-putting to some Star Wars fans, the song does make sense inside of context. If it is within Desmona's character to sing, it is within Leia's. Starting with this script, Doescher allows for more bending of iambic pentameter at the end of lines. He also breaks with Elizabethan verse in the character of Yoda, who speaks in haiku.
Nay, nay, try thou not, but do thou or do thou not. For there is no try.
Now, I know what the purists are going to say.
He dares use haiku and call it Shakespeare?
Whew. But Doescher does have precedent for using the haiku form in a Shakespeare adaptation. As Brels Held High pointed out in their video on Akira Kurosawa's The Throne of Blood, when Japanese novelists first began translating Shakespeare into their language, they used the haiku form. So it does make sense to use it inside of a Shakespeare adaptation. Plus, it is much better than any of the other techniques that Doescher considered using to set off Yoda's speech. Plus, it is beautiful to read and listen to, so I am totally good with it. On the other hand, Doescher takes up another Shakespeare convention and has Han and Leia speak in couplets and quatrains when they are alone.
A scoundrel? Scoundrel is the word you choose. I like that word, when spoken from your lips.
Pray cease that touch. It doth my heart confuse.
Doescher also uses more stage directions in this script, such as, he exits pursued by a wampa, and the chorus is less important. Doescher realized that he was overusing the chorus in the first script, and he allows the actors to carry more of the action here. This is a great improvement. Remember, all you bright young playwrights, theater should show, not tell. Doescher also creates more of an extended universe with this script, combining elements of drama history with Star Wars in some really cool ways. For instance, he has a character tell a story that combines the Sand People with edifice. Doescher also makes up for some of my dissatisfaction with Vader's characterization, with a freaking amazing aside expressing his decision to save Luke. It's so awesome that I'm not even gonna read it here. Go buy the book yourself! Man, look at how much we pulled from these scripts. We talked about Elizabethan stage conventions, the problems of adaptation, Shakespeare's use of ghosts, the structure of Henry V, archetypes that show up in Shakespeare and in Star Wars, Darth Vader's characterization, and all other kinds of crazy stuff. This speaks both to the quality of Doescher's work and its usefulness for educational purposes. But it also shows the power of thoughtful reading, which is what we're all about on this show. We want you, as readers, writers, dramatists, and filmmakers, to enjoy and think deeply about good works. And we want you to know that you can always have fun while doing so. So if you have not already, rush onto Amazon, order the trilogy box set or the audio drama, and enjoy a beautiful, hilarious, and thoughtful piece that truly takes you back to a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. We'll see you next time. Read on. Gotcha. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching our first episode. We are so excited for all of you that tuned in. Please like and subscribe and join us next week as we tackle Heart of Darkness. Until then, read on and keep being you.
Thank you.